A very warm welcome to all you Club 1999ers. Now, who are the main suspects of the NYS scam? Who are the main suspects behind this massive fraud against the people of Kenya? Now, the way I'm going to do this, I'll give you the facts, and even before I name those people, you'll already have the names in your lips. Okay? So let's start. Now, one very basic line of defense against looting of government money is something called the budget. The simple truth is that you cannot embezzle funds, you cannot loot funds from a ministry that does not have the fund allocation. To put it even simpler, you cannot steal money from somebody who does not have money. Now, thieves are not smart people generally, because if you steal, it's not a smart thing. Definitely something that will not stand the test of time. However, even in that situation, there's no thief who will scheme and go to the Kibera slums and organize an intricate plan of how to break into one of the slum houses to steal money. No thief will do that. And it is for the very simple reason that there's no money to be stolen in Kibera. So what do thieves do? They'll go to Muthaiga, they'll go to Karen, they'll go to Runda, they'll go where the money is. So, before money is embezzled from the government, before corruption can take place, the funds need to be allocated. So we have to start with a simple question. Who allocates the funds to the various ministries? Now hold on to that thought for a while, hold on to that question for a while, and let's proceed. We now know that a group of legislators, and I've really been waiting for this list of legislators, hence the delay in this recording, and I'm afraid I still don't have the full list, and I don't want to release it in bits and pieces. It looks like I'm favoring people and making some untouchable. Anyway, we have been told, and we know now for sure, that a group of legislators fought for more funds to be allocated to the NYS. The long and short of what I'm saying is that it is impossible, to get any budgetary allocation approved until it gets the nod from the highest office in the land, from the executive, the president and his deputy. Now, there's something else to note, very important, so that we get a clear picture of how this corruption took place and those involved. And it is this very simple fact that embezzlement of public funds, corruption, increases dramatically as we near a general election. Why? Because funds have to be raised to finance the campaigns of a general election. Now, according to the Constitution, you're not allowed to use public funds to campaign. So even if you're the ruling Jubilee Party, you have to raise your own private funds to campaign for the re-election of your presidential candidate. You cannot use government money. Now allow me to take you back to the Moi days. During the Moi days, there was no presidential election, so there was no need to raise funds for the presidential election. However, there were funds which were required to finance the election of the president's people, because the president needed people in parliament. He needed his majority of people in parliament who were in his corner, so that there would be no legislation which would be passed in parliament that would go against the president, even as powerful as he was. Now, how was this money raised? This money was raised through sugar. And the way this scam worked is that sugar factories normally need to be closed for maintenance. So somebody organized for all the sugar factories in Kenya to be closed for maintenance at the same time. So as soon as those factories are closed, there's a huge shortage of sugar in the country. Then the next thing that happens is somebody imports that sugar. Now, for some reason, imported sugar is much cheaper than how much it costs to produce sugar locally in Kenya. So the margins are huge. Now, of course, this is a government project. The funds are designed to assist the government in a certain agenda. But those people at the forefront of this scheme are also allowed to make their own money. It's almost an unwritten law. They must make their own money. So we had this curious happening during the Moi days, where sugar was coming in through the port, flooding the Kenyan market, being sold at more or less the same prices as local sugar, and indeed in many cases at a higher price because there was a shortage and people made a killing. But as this was happening, there was other sugar which was coming to the country and it was not passing through the port. The way this worked is that the ship would dock somewhere close to port, but not at port. And then what would happen is that these rich tycoons would hire speedboats and they would get labor on the beach. And therefore the speedboats would go to and fro between the ship and the beach, delivering sacks and sacks of sugar. They'd be loaded onto lorries and transferred to wherever to be sold at a huge profit. The long and short of what I'm saying is that governments of Kenya have been known to get involved in corruption, stealing money from the government which they're running for the purposes of a certain political agenda, most notably general elections. Now you'll remember last year, shortly before the general elections, the government allowed the importation of maize because there was a shortage in the country. An artificial shortage, as I've said in my video at that time. This maize was designed to make money for the government the same way sugar used to make money for the government in those days. However, something very interesting and something very telling, indeed something which emphasizes the point I'm trying to make here, and indeed is irrefutable evidence, is the fact that the government extended that period where they were allowing people to import maize. Yes, they did. When was that period extended? Now, this is the interesting bit. It was extended after the nullification of the first presidential election of August 8th. That nullification took place on 1st of September. Shortly after that, the period for importation of maize was extended. And the reason was very simple. The government needed to raise money for the re-election campaigns, for the round 2 presidential election campaigns of Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. Now take very careful note of what I've already told you, that even as these schemes and scams organized from deep inside the highest level of government, even as they're going on, the people who are implementing them are allowed to make their own money. And nobody gives them a limit of how much money to make. When you understand this simple truth, then you understand what the NYS scandal is all about. Now, who pushes government legislative agenda in parliament? Of course, it's Majority Leader Aden Duale. Where does Majority Leader Aden Duale get his instructions from? Who tells him what to do? You know the answer to that. The highest authority in the land. That is the president and the deputy president. And that is exactly where the green light, the authorization to increase funding to NYS came from. And that is where the instruction to push it through parliament came from. Bottom line, NYS chief suspects. Number 1, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Number 2, William Samoei Ruto. Now the people who are being currently prosecuted, and indeed the people who are going to be prosecuted in the weeks and months to come, are just what I'd call watu wa mkono. Those are the people implementing the scheme to steal from government coffers. And of course, as they steal, they have also to steal something for themselves. Now, these people are usually very confident, and they should be. Why? Because they know whatever they're doing has been sanctioned by the highest authority in the land. Now, this kind of corruption does not take place only during election time. It takes place all the time. Now, it's very important that we go into the reasons why. And let's go to the beginning of Mwai Kibaki's administration to find that out. Now, as I've said here before many times, Mwai Kibaki came into office with a clarion call for zero tolerance to corruption. And indeed, in the first few months in office, or rather the first few weeks, he showed his determination to tackle this monster called corruption. But as a result of this policy, the Mwai Kibaki government became very unstable. Now let's look into the reasons why. Now for the presidency to be stable, because the presidency is a political office, for the presidency to be stable, it requires very, very strong support from the grassroots. It requires strong political backing countrywide. In the absence of that, let's say the president is doing something in Coast Province or in another area of the country. People in that particular area, more specifically political leaders, they just simply sabotage it. It will not move an inch. This is precisely what was happening during the early weeks of the Mwai Kibaki administration. Now the way to smooth that over is with the use of money. And this is where the cartels come in. The cartels are closer to the center of power than most people think. So one cartel comes in and says we need to stabilize things in Mombasa. Usually they have very close contact to the highest authority in the land. Yeah. So they say in a certain area we have a problem, we need to smooth things over. And they say we can raise the money from 1, 2, 3. And so this proposal is considered, and when it's approved, the budget allocation is approved in Parliament. And the funds are made available for looting. Of course, I've greatly simplified the situation because there's a lot of politicking involved, yeah, even in this embezzlement, okay? But that is the long and short of it. That's the crux of the way it works. And as all this stealing takes place, a very senior politician has a girlfriend somewhere. He wants the girlfriend of Mpango wa Kando to benefit from this loot. So he just instructs her, yeah, just go to NYS, do 1, 2, 3. You don't have to deliver anything. You'll get a check for so many millions. Of course, what they end up getting is just a drop in the ocean compared to the total funds which have been embezzled for a certain political objective. Of course, a lot of it will end up in people's personal pockets, but the political objective has been achieved. And those involved have had their financial objectives achieved. So that's how corruption works, to keep government running. Corruption and government are joined at the hip. They cannot be separated without killing both of them. That is really what it is. Now somebody shot me an email that was a real eye-opener. And I did my own digging around, and I found out something absolutely amazing. Now this person who wrote me the email said the following. Sometimes to stop a forest fire, a forest fire that is spreading very fast, one good strategy is to isolate a certain area where the forest fire is raging towards, and then you start your own fire. Okay? So the whole effect of what will happen is that by the time the fire reaches that place, instead of gaining momentum, it will lose force. Because what will happen, you'd have already burnt a certain area, and therefore the fire will not have fuel to continue. This is a very effective strategy for stopping a big forest fire. Now in this video, we have already seen that government is corruption and corruption is government. And therefore, the big question that would arise is what is going on with the current very spirited, aggressive fight against corruption? Well, that forest fire analogy gives you the answer. It is as clear as day that Kenyans are very, very determined to fight for a new Kenya. Kenyans are very determined to fight for change. And this fire of change, this fire of a new Kenya is raging, and it's heading very fast and threatening the status quo. And so, it has been decided to halt this fire by starting another fire. And that fire which has been started is called corruption. So that by the time this big force, this big fire, reaches the place where it will change the status quo, or where it threatens the presidency, it will not be able to go any further, because it will not have any fuel to go any further. Why? Because there was a fire which was started deliberately in front of its path. Yeah? The whole idea being to quench that main fire. But I have some shocking news for you. This strategy has gone terribly wrong. And very soon, Kenyans will be able to understand what I mean by that. This is precisely what I mean. The whole idea of starting this fight against corruption was birthed by somebody who knew very well that Kenyans will get very excited when they see some big fish arraigned in court. They will get very excited when they see some of these people being jailed. But it has not quite worked out like that. What has happened, this has been a case where you feed a lion with some meat, and actually what you end up doing is giving the lion appetite for much more meat than what you've given it. Yeah? In fact, now it even wants to eat you. The government has delivered PSS to the people of Kenya, but the people of Kenya are not satisfied. They want bigger heads to roll. What is developing here is a situation whereby the government's fight for corruption is getting a life of its own. And it is becoming a monster which the government will not be able to control. A monster they created who has now gone berserk and out of control. And now they don't know what to do because you created this monster. The whole idea was to scare some people. Now it has not even finished its objectives. It is now scaring you who created it. In fact, it's threatening your life, you who created it. Now it will be very interesting to see how the fight against corruption progresses. But I've already given you a heads up. Yeah, that is what is happening. It's getting very rapidly getting out of control. And if I can name names, yeah, I can give you at least one name of a person who the government will find very difficult, in fact more and more difficult to protect going forward. And that name is NYS, the governor of Kirinyaga. Going forward, the powers that be will find it much more difficult every day to keep her from prosecution. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.